Hello and welcome everyone to Love and the Planets. And I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So this week, Armand, finally Mercury goes direct at long last. It's kind of been, a long while coming, really. And it's been quite an awkward, kind of difficult Mercury retrograde. So I think we're all going to really be breathing a sigh of relief. But of course, sorry, just to add, not to forget that, of course, there's a bit of a shadow period. So we're not totally out of the woods for at least another few days after next Wednesday. So kind of towards the end of the week is a better time for communication, I would say.
Yeah, midweek, right, when Mercury stations is going to be a time that you sort of want to, again, I've been saying it, we've been saying it for a long time now, text messages and emails could easily be misinterpreted. So you're going to want to kind of, be speaking in person, on the phone, let people hear your voice. That's especially true as Mercury stationing around midweek. And that really essentially makes, because there's a few days coming into the station, a few days coming out of it. It makes it essentially this entire week of one, a little careful with communication. And it's been a bear of a Mercury retrograde as far as I can see.
Oh, yes. I'm hearing so many people having problems around miscommunication or things being actually lots of errors and lots of confusion and so on around. So just to also say that, of course, now that it's going direct, it will still have to go over the old territory it went, when it was going retrograde. So there might be some revisiting of some of those issues or that kind of communication. And finally, it reaches the same point it was when it went retrograde on the 21st of May. So effectively, that's at the point where we catch up with where we were at that point, and then Mercury, keeps going into, kind of goes into new territory. So there's still another chance to go over, and it's quite good because there's kind of a chance to maybe fix anything that, there was a mistake with or confusion with, particularly in relationships. If there were misunderstandings, often they're unintentional, but, it's a good time to kind of go over those and see how they can be rectified.
Yeah, I think that, coming out of next week, I think would be, coming out of this week would be a good time. That's Mercury retrograde.
Yes. Yeah.
Coming out of this week would be the time to go forward and to try to put things together and do a little bit of repair work and so on, which we'll talk about in following weeks. It's true that Mercury gets out of his shadow at around the same time that Venus gets out of the shadow of her retrograde. It's been a while that Venus has gone direct and so on, but Venus is still sort of plodding through the same territory as well. So a lot of issues are kind of starting to sort of get into place, but they're not quite there yet, which sort of suggests to me, especially because we have a Leo moon at midweek and the sun is sextile to Neptune, it seems to me like it might be a good week, or certainly at midweek it might be a good idea to kind of back off, just do some sort of fun stuff together, be playful, creative, rather than sort of trying to force things onto a more serious level.
True, and also to mention that, of course, the beginning of week, we've got BELTANE, which is the May Day festival, which is really, certainly in Celtic terms, kind of the start of the summer. You wouldn't think it looking out the window here in Ireland, but technically it is. And of course, in ancient times, fires were lit and the cattle were brought out. So, and it's kind of an interesting point because it's that midway point between spring and summer equinox. So it kind of just denotes, a halfway mark. But the interesting thing is that day, of course, the moon is square Uranus. So it's interesting, the start is summer, so the start of new things, maybe also, some spring cleaning, that kind of. So in relationships, to really think, how are we going forward into the summer months? How are we going forward, certainly in this hemisphere, into, this new period in time, going towards the longest day of the summer? And so a little bit that newness is coming in.
And those are the southern hemisphere. We don't want to forget our
absolutely our Australian friends, New Zealand friends, yes,
South American and African.
Yes, yes.
And if anybody's watching at the South Pole, we want to
Yes.
include them too, in Antarctica. But as unlikely as that may be, there's a penguin tuning in. But I think that, you know, in the Southern hemisphere, there's always this kind of mixed message, because you have the signs of the zodiac that are very much geared towards beginnings, and it's happening at the end of the year. And that sometimes requires, I think, a little bit of an adjustment, a sense of, you know, maybe what you're feeling inwardly is not necessarily in tune with what's going on, you know, in the atmosphere, like, you know, in the physical atmosphere. And so that might be a little bit of an adjustment sometimes. If you've been living there for a while, I'm sure you're used to it. But
that's true. That's true. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it's kind of, yeah, it's true. It's true in terms of how the planets are. Yes. So towards the end of the week, we've got, of course, the Sun in Taurus, QUINCUNX, Jupiter in Libra. So it's kind of got, you know, an interesting feel about it, you know, because the Sun in Taurus kind of plods along, and then Jupiter in Libra really kind of is very much about relationship and expanding relationships. So, you know, there's a feeling that it could be quite a nice weekend. Maybe that Friday might be quite a nice time to go out and do something fun, enjoy some nice time together.
that's what Jupiter and Libra will say. In Taurus, the Sun in Taurus might say, "Yeah, I don't know. Let's get Chinese and stay in."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Although it's quite a sensual sign, so it might kind of enjoy. Maybe they could combine the two together.
Yeah, I
Kind of
think that
work.
could be worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Well, but isn't that a QUINCUNX thing, Mark? I'm gonna get a little excited here. Isn't that the QUINCUNX thing? Is like when you're aware of it, because that could be something that would be like, you know, like, oh gosh, you got to spend another Friday night in. It's like, oh, but I'm really tired. Maybe, you know, operating underneath as a QUINCUNX that we're not aware of, it could be really difficult. But when you're more aware of it, you know, then you can sort of like come to some sort of agreement.
absolutely. And I think that's the way with all the planets in the sky, isn't it? It's trying to find, when they're in aspect to each other, it's trying to find a way that we can accommodate both. And it may not be 100% for either, but, you know, if there's some accommodation, then we can compromise, really, which is what relationships are about after all, isn't it?
As long as I get my way, yeah.
Of course, or my way, yes. So at least it's a week where there aren't as many frazzled energies about. So I think this is really, quite honestly, probably the first week in a long time that we can say that, because we've had such a buildup of a lot of energies, very powerful transpersonal planetary energies that have felt really kind of a little jangly. So this is a week kind of to draw breath a little bit more, and, you know, spend some nice time on our own, spend some nice time with our loved ones, and just not feel quite as pushed and pulled.
Certainly, moving away from that mid-April energy, it should feel a little bit better. It should feel a bit better. Mercury notwithstanding, he's been throwing some curveballs. Also, just to say that the week begins with the moon in Cancer, which sometimes has a little bit of a protective feel to it. It's not the most expansive, out there, fun type of event. By midweek, the Leo moon will take over. But it begins with the moon in Cancer, which sometimes has a little bit more of a protective type of feel to it.
Yes, absolutely. Quite a nurturing feel, though. So kind of maybe some nurturing with self and in relationships. And also to say, the next week when we're back, we'll be talking about the nodes changing signs. So the week after is kind of an exciting week. So we hope everybody will join us then. And thank you very much. See you soon, Armand. Bye-bye.
Take care, Margaret.